I think one thing that is very obvious in the whole world of addiction is that an infallible sign of getting well is a return of a sense of humor. And I believe that it is people in the world of addiction who have taught others with various ailments and illnesses to laugh at themselves. Because you know as well as I do, there are no smiles in the homes of addicts, and the laughs are very hollow. And to be able to retrieve something of the comic from what had been so tragic when it happened, I think is a real grace. Stories about drunks are wonderful. They really are. And we have taught others to laugh at themselves. This old drunk was walking along the street and had a huge knot right in the top of his head. But he said, "What happened to you?" He said, "Putting toilet water on my hair and the seat fell down." You know, those things happen to drunks. Another old alcoholic had both of his ears very heavily bandaged, and a buddy said, "What in the world happened to you?" "Well," he said, "I was drunk last night, sitting on the sofa watching TV. The wife was standing beside me ironing. And about 9:30, she went in the kitchen to fix something to eat. She put the iron up, of course, right beside the phone. And of course, the phone rang, and I went, wham! And he said, "Well, I can understand that, but your other ear is bandaged too." He said, "Yeah, the guy called back." See, these things, you know, happen to drunks. But my task here tonight is, I'd like to make a few remarks about getting back to basics. And I think it's important, you know, over the past few years, I have said, because I have truly wanted to, that I would like to do something on getting back to basics, and everybody I spoke to kind of verbally applauded that, because they see things happening in the world of treatment and also in the world of recovery outside that they would like to just shake loose and kind of get back to the basics. And I believe this, and I believe it very strongly. Before we talk about getting back to them, let's talk about the basics. I believe that in order to understand any movement, organization, institution, or even individual, you have to know something of the history, the background, the why and the wherefore, the purpose and the nature of it. Now, you know as well as I do that people who are addicted to any chemical substance, whether it be liquid, alcohol, prescription medication, liquid or pill, or what we call the street drugs, marijuana, cocaine, crack cocaine, or heroin. And if you're addicted to one, you're addicted to all of them. Mood-altering chemicals. In that world of addiction, men and women have been looking for the answer for it literally for centuries. And we are blessed to live in the era in which finally the answer was found. Alcoholics Anonymous. And so powerful has that therapy been that it is used, the 12 principles of recovery for alcoholics are also used for drug addicts, NA, specific cocaine addicts, CA, narcotics, well, we just mentioned that, overeating, OA. There's even a movement founded, in fact, I met the woman who started at Minneapolis, EA, Emotions Anonymous. But they use the principles of recovery from alcoholism and addiction to, you know, chemical addiction of any kind for practically every one of the other of human problems and found them to work. How did all of this come into being? AA was started by two men, prompted by the first of the two, Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob Smith. Both men were from Vermont, and I had the privilege not too long ago, I think it's up in St. Johnsbury, Vermont, to go drive right by the home in which Dr. Bob grew up. Beautiful White House, and I think some AA members are buying it. It's kind of an office building now, but they're buying it to simply establish it as a sort of a shrine up there. But anyway, Dr. Bob wound up in Akron, Ohio, and Bill Wilson wound up in New York City. Dr. Bob, obviously, from his name, was a physician. Bill Wilson became a Wall Street whiz kid after he had served in the Army during World War I. Now, if you were privileged to see Bill W., and James Woods portrayed him, and James Garner portrayed Dr. Bob, obviously it was accurate. It had to be accurate. I mean, they are, you know, so modern. These people had to stick to what had happened, and they were very well done. If you saw them, you know that Bill Wilson's drinking climbed along with his ambition and his job and his work. He went to the top. He was worth a lot of money, but his drinking paralleled his rise. And then his drinking brought him down. I believe with all my heart that during the last few years of Bill's drinking, he was not in denial. He knew exactly what was wrong with him. He had reached a point in his life where he was unemployable. People couldn't trust him to carry out business deals. They couldn't trust him to complete anything. He couldn't trust himself to complete anything. And he had reached a point where his wife Lois was supporting him. She worked in one of the department stores over in Manhattan. And she'd leave a couple of dollars on the dresser in the morning to get him started with his drinking in order to survive. And then she'd go over to Manhattan to work to support him. And as you know from the film, her father just absolutely had no use whatsoever for Bill because of what he was doing to the doctor's daughter. He had no use for Bill Wilson. And as always happens in the heart of the addicted person, he ultimately came to have no use for himself. He knew exactly what was wrong. It was his drinking. And he was under the care of Dr. Silkworth, a wonderful non-alcoholic physician who loved alcoholics and tried to help them. One morning, Bill was shaking out a hangover, drinking, when an old drinking buddy of his dropped by, Ebby Thatcher. You don't hear his name much in the annals of AA. Those who have read a little bit of AA Comes of Age or any historical thing on AA are familiar with that name. But Austin Ripley, a man who had profound influence in my own life, he used to say every alcoholic who has gotten well owes a debt to Ebby Thatcher. He said Bill scored the touchdown, but it was Ebby who handed him the ball. And how true that is. Ebby didn't enjoy permanent sobriety all his life. I think he had 9 or 10 months toward the end of his life. But he was one of the tragic cases who helped Bill, couldn't help himself. Anyway, he showed up and Bill offered him a drink and he said, "No, thanks." And Bill said, "Aren't you drinking?" He said, "No." He said, "What happened to you?" "Well, I guess I got God." He was nicely dressed, 3-piece suit. And I think he spoke to Bill about the Oxford groups. It was something that sprang up around that time, groups of people who simply tried to forget their denominational differences and who simply tried together to live the principles of Christianity. Well, anyway, it wasn't too long after that when Bill wound up on another drunk and found himself in the hospital under Dr. Silkworth's care. Now, obviously, I wasn't there, so I am making up whatever conversation I will share with you. But it had to go, you know, somewhat along these lines. He said, "Doctor, you know as well as I do, I am not weak-willed." I don't think any alcoholic or drug addict is weak-willed. He said, "I just can't control my intake of alcohol." And he said, right now, at this point in my life, I want to quit. And I can't. Now he said, I've done everything you've suggested as best I know how. And here I am again. He was in Towns Hospital in New York City. And then, ladies and gentlemen, this is what happened that has changed, literally, the face of the earth. He asked a question that had to come from the prompting of divine grace. What else would prompt someone who had functioned most of his adult life according to the principle of self-will run riot? What else but God's grace could have forced him to ask this question? I wonder if I can't get sober by trying to help another drunk get sober. Ladies and gentlemen, the answer to that question holds the substance of the very essence of human nature. You and I are created to love. And love, real, true love, is functioning for the good of others. And he asked that question. But notice the way he asked it. I wonder if I can't get sober. That's the goal. Self-preservation is always the very first law of nature. Every one of us in this room seeks happiness. I just want to be happy. I want to be normal. I want to be decent. I want people to respect me. I want to be at peace in here. I want to be happy. How do we get it? Many people try to buy it. Many people strive for it in things. Listen to his question. I wonder if I might not survive, get well, become fulfilled, be happy by trying to help somebody else get there. Who had ever asked a question like that? Dr. Silkworth, I believe, was one of the most intelligent people alive. I believe that real intelligence is not knowing what you know. A moron knows what he knows. An intelligent person is one who knows what he doesn't know. It usually takes about a half century to get to that. And it has nothing to do with college or university degrees that you pile up. I wish to God they'd do away with degrees. I think it bolsters pride. Well, this is an accomplishment that I have made. Don't brag about being intelligent. That's what human beings are supposed to be. We are intelligent beings by God's decree. You don't get medals for doing what you're supposed to do or being what you're supposed to be. Whenever I say, hey, don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-intellectual at all. Not at all. I have 3 degrees of my own. They don't mean anything, but geez, they look good. But I've come to realize that it's a kind of a mundane realization, but do you know that thermometers have degrees? Anyway, Dr. Silkworth said, I don't know. I wonder, I've tried everything else. I've been here, I've been there, I've tried this doctor, I've tried that doctor, we've tried this medication, we've tried this diet. Here I am drunk again, and I think that if I keep this up, I'm going to die. I wonder if I can't get well by trying to help somebody else get well. And Silkworth said, I don't know. However, since nothing beats a trial but a failure, why not try and see? It's exactly what Bill did. The brilliance of AA.